All right, we are live. This is MC1 Gamer here, bringing you another unlocking of Age of Sigmar. Today we're going to do Fyreslayers, and well, guess what? We've got probably the most well-known Fyreslayer player on the planet, Kenny Lull. How you doing, Kelly? Kenny, thanks for joining us here today.
Good. Thanks for having me.
So Kenny, I met you at I think it was Holy Wars last year, but I had seen and heard about you. We might have even been on a show at one point together, or may have been Warhammer Weekly or at some point. But the reason why I call you the foremost or the most popular Fyreslayer player is because that's really not just a comment. This is kind of true. You probably have racked up the highest volume of games that anybody has legitimately recorded that anybody knows about, and the experience that you bring for this particular sub-faction is I think it's kind of unparalleled, and so I figured I'd like to have you on board and get some of the lists that you have. For anybody who's new, before we go and hear a little more about Kenny and some of his background, the format we're going to talk about today, we're going to go through 3 lists that Kenny has put together. One of which is going to be a pure Fyreslayer list, and then we're going to have 2 that incorporate some of the new ally mechanics from the GHB 17 that came out fairly recently, all of which are going to be at 2K lists. So let's get back to you, Kenny. Now, first of all, Fyreslayers, they're not really kind of new anymore. They've been around, but when they first came out, there was a lot of different things from what we see Fyreslayers are today. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how on the kind of the arc of where Fyreslayers have come from when they first launched?
Yeah, I think so. So they were like the first brand new army, right? Because like Archeon, the Ever-Chosen was before that, but that had something that had existed before. So when I see the Fyreslayers come out, I was over in Sweden at the time, and I'm like, hey, look, there's dwarves, like a full Slayer army. That's going to be awesome. And I know that there were some issues with the models and everything, and I was a little bit surprised that they were as limited as they are. So there's like 3 units you can build, which comes out of 2 boxes. And then you have 6 characters, which could become 9 total buildable heroes. So a lot of the problems that I saw with people, they're like, well, they're very expensive to buy the models. And a lot of them didn't like the look of the sculpting, the art. Especially there's that famous Volkite Berserker, that champion, the guy that's doing it. Well, he's got with his arms back out. And I know that was a very criticized model. And one of the things we did early on was with the Fyreslayer group, which is over 1,000 people now, we're making dice, is I found that, you know what, if you paint those guys not Caucasian, if you don't paint them like white people, then a lot of those issues with like muscles and everything and the deformities, they don't really show so much. So you're not stuck with the studio kit. So they came out, and you barely didn't see them. Everyone is kind of, I think you probably agree that they'd say that they were too expensive to buy the models, and they were too expensive once points came around to field the models. And that I would absolutely agree with. I think that's very fair. They needed some help. So early on, before the first round came out from the GHB too, like when they were putting this out, they did an experimental thing several months in advance where they looked at points, and they started to drop some of the points, and we got to play with all that. And I really got to actually feel the impact of that when I played for a while. And then at last Adepticon, had to go back to standard list from the first GHB. And that was rough. That was, it's so painful. Like I felt that, and like, that's bad, because it's a horde army, and you don't have a lot of options. So you got to make what you have to make it work. So they, that helped a lot, the point drop and everything. And of course it worked in a kind of another way, because then the people wanted to play they wanted to play Fyreslayers. So then they had to go pay with more actual currency to buy more of these models, because the points. So I had like a 4,000 point army, and it went down to like 2,500 or something. I think like at Holy Wars last year, I was looking at it, like it was the first event that they let me use, or I think they let anybody use the new test points. And I remember the night before, I was like 400 points had dropped. Like I had to move some stuff around in the list and everything just to make it work. But it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, we had you were counting up to 100 at that point. I think we were in the high 90s, and when you and I got to play, so I had the honor of playing one of the number of games that you played just before you hit that 100 mark.
That's right.
So
yeah.
I think there was a 98 or 97, something like that.
Yeah, because the last game of Holy Wars was game 100. And
100, and that was like almost a year ago. No, that was about maybe 9 months ago.
Yeah. And then I recently just hit game 150. So that's pretty good. Now that's 150 with solo Fyreslayers. So I've played a few more games. That's probably more like 154, because I did some where I did a little bit of allying in. Like I used the first one I tried was the Excelsior Priest and the Griffhound from Silver Tower when that came out. And that was kind of cool. And I've always been very fluff-wise. Like, I'm just going to make my army the way it is. And it's hard for me in any game system. This is the first time I've ever actually tried allies, because I never have enough points to even just put what I want on the table. You know, I build this big collection and I can't even put that on. So you start thinking about allies, like I don't even have enough room to put my own guys on there. So, but then there's definitely holes that you can plug with the new ally system, and even with the allegiance traits and everything. So I think they've gone from having, you know, that points thing, that points drop was a really good way to start in the beginning, and then I think people started becoming Fyreslayer curious maybe, and you know, checking them out, look at it. And then we started joking about, like, well, we have a star collecting box. I'm like, there's no way it will ever be a Magma Droth, because if you look on the other model, like, it's 110. So if you had like Seraphon, right, your Carnosaur is 85, you get the rest of the box for free. That's pretty good. We don't have an $85 model. We have a 110 model. Never thought that would happen the way it did. I was thinking it'd be one box of Volkites, one Hearthguard, and either a Battlesmith or a Grimwrath, probably a Battlesmith. And then boom, we get this instead. And it just all comes at once. Like, our cup runneth over, like, so much.
Oh, it changed. The trajectory changed quickly. I bought the Magma Droth before the Start Collecting box came out. So I was kind of sad about that, because for the same price I would have gotten a whole bunch of extra stuff. I did it primarily because I thought maybe I would go into Fyreslayers. I've kind of been a little more conservative since then, hoping that more death stuff would be released. So I'm kind of holding on to that currency. But I bought the Magma Droth and I converted out with some wings to make him a Magma Dragon. And I magnetized the wings so I could put one of the Rune Smiter, Rune Father, Rune Son, whatever, on top of it as well, to use as potentially a Magma Droth. But of course, I overpaid, because now there's the Start Collecting box with a much greater value. I know that when it first came out, there were some criticisms about the helmets, about the look of them. If you either loved them or hated them, I didn't think there was a middle ground. I think most people loved them. I think that a lot of people who were looking at the numbers were kind of, I did think, dissuaded a little bit by the over costing points, much less the real life dollars and cents that they would cost. But once, like you said, the points dropped and the new Get Starting box came out, and of course some of the new expanded things have come out, they have become one of the top tier armies. And they have grown and become far more popular. And I can't wait to see how they kind of take some of these events by storm. Now, we haven't seen them win anything that I know of, unless I'm wrong.
Nothing huge. A guy on our Facebook page this morning, he reported that he won a one-day event in the UK with his Fyreslayers. But I mean, I think these are more like 10 people than, you know, not 200.
Right. Until we see a GT, that's when we really start seeing the high-level competition performing. And even if they appear in the top 10, and look, with anything else, it's about the generalship behind the lists. Obviously, everything being equal, it's going to be about the generalship in all cases. But there's some armies that I think have some great advantages. And right now with the meta, Fyreslayers are very much in the top tier, and they've moved up fairly recently. I think certainly with the GHP 17. Now, when you play, just to give somebody who's new to Age of Sigmar, if they're interested in this army, how would you describe their play style?
So I would describe them as come up and punch you in the face. It's definitely very much a horde army. So if you have I guess let me just put this out. If you are somebody who was in fantasy and you have not joined AOS yet, or you're just coming back to it, you got to throw away your preconceived notion of what a Slayer is, right? Because the Slayer in the fantasy was a different set of mechanics. It was a different idea. And while they've carried some of that over in Grimnir and Fyreslayers into the Age of Sigmar realm, they're not the Slayers that they had in fantasy. So you just got to if you get rid of that, this becomes a whole lot easier for you. And it's a horde army, and everybody has I guess I should say that right. So there's things that I will try not to say, but everybody has an 8-inch fire steel axe. I will probably call that a Nerf axe at some point, so I apologize if I do. Magma bomb equals Magma Droth. Again, something I just came up with about that, but that's around a strategy which you'll hear about. And it's a horde army, right? So unfortunately, you don't have a lot of options. Like, you have 3 units you can build from in characters, and you're always going to have a lot of heroes. It's one of the things I see now when people are testing lists, they don't have enough heroes in there. And we'll talk about that as we get through. But you have a bunch of bodies that are going to go up there, and they're going to be very tough because they have the hair save. That's the other thing, is that the The
When
word
you
save,
describe what that is, because I know
yeah.
I remember when I first played you, and I had read the army, I had done actually an unlocking about it. But when you called it the hair save, I was like, oh, it took a while for me to get it into my head. So what's the hair save?
It's gone around the world now. That's good. So when you Fyreslayers roll to save a wound after you've taken damage, like death has the 6-up, sometimes the death save they call it. The hair save is what I refer to as that extra roll to try and save a wound that you've already taken, whether it's a regular wound or a mortal wound.
Right, it's a special save. But why do you call it a hair save? Is really what I'm interested in, because we know that they all have those really cool mohawks, and I'm sure that it's derived around that. So what's the fluff behind that?
Well, you basically got a naked dwarf, and he's covering his nethers because that's what you got to do. It can't be R-rated, and you got a beard and a bunch of hair. So I like to think of it as you call upon as I roll when I do this. Like I invoke and I call upon the power of my mohawk, and the power of my mohawk will save me. I can either lean and catch it on the beard or hopefully the mohawk. I can like lower it like a shark and ram you, but somehow that hair will save me. And it's magic Urgold hair and everything. So like you may have crazy steel or aether chemistry or whatever it is, or powers of chaos, or you could be a god beast yourself. But a Fyreslayer's hair product is very important to his lineage and his own safety as well. So it's efficiency thing.
There's special Fyreslayer moose then, I guess, huh?
That's right. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So there is no actual fluff that derives this special resilience to their mohawks. This is something you came up with.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
All right. Because when we had played, and this is going back to February of this year, when you started talking about this hair save, I was like, I just kind of went with it, because I play so many different armies. It's kind of hard to keep all that knowledge in. Sometimes it goes in one ear and leaks out the other. And when I heard the hair slave, I remember I asked you, I was like, what is that? And I realized that it was a special save. So yeah, the lingo for the viewers, let's try to keep that to a minimum, but explain it when you do. Yeah, magma bomb, I know what that is now, but somebody might not know that it's the magma draw blowing out their fire, or no, rather it's the flame that burns.
Yeah, well, I call it that because it does best. I found, unfortunately, we have things that do best when they're dying, or when they die. They become more efficient that way. And a magma bomb, I think of it as just basically this grenade you chuck into the appropriate kind of pick your target, and then it explodes. It bleeds every phase. It can lash its tail possibly, and it just sort of blows up. And so it's more it's more effective as a bomb than it is an actual beast. And it's hard for getting around the fluff for especially dwarf players or Duarda now. Like it's hard for me. I only for the first time ever did a retreat. I've never done a retreat. Just never. It's like I play Dwarden. I can't retreat. I can't possibly do that. Who cares if it costs me the game? And we have these axes, and it's a style of play. So it's weird for me thinking about sacrificing. But when you take it, I guess, from a stance of a narrative, then it's a little bit easier. Now I should put out a disclaimer, as people know me, and it's so funny. Like I'm watching a game on Twitch, and someone's in the UK in the chat, and they're saying like, oh, they're talking about how bad I roll my dice. Like they know it's spread that far.
Oh, it was bad when we played. I was astonished. You had gotten the cost break too, and you had a series of really bad rolls that I think cost you the game too.
Oh my god, yeah, I have unholy bad dice luck. Like it's there's holy wars, there's unholy wars, and that's me. Like it's you have to just see it really. If you don't believe me, you just have to see it. But that's interesting actually, because like I've tend to recently notice that I do average or above average when it comes to the hair save. So catching the second catch on that wound, that may go through. But once in a while, I can do okay. But so I had to build around this with the army, and there's not a lot of options. So that'll come up again when we talk about this. What's interesting to me now is watching on the TGA and on the Fyreslayer group, all these people that are throwing out lists, and there's no problem with any of them. I think it's great. It's really exciting to see it out there. But some of them have not played them yet, or it just reminds me of when I was getting first into it too, when the army came out. You're thinking like, wow, this looks really cool. This looks great on paper. That's going to be awesome. But then you play through some of those and you realize that, maybe that didn't quite work out the way you wanted to, or an AURIC HEARTHGUARD unit that doesn't have a hair save. It has no way of saving mortal wounds, so then it's just gone. They just get deleted. So these things that are tempting at first, are interesting. So a big piece of advice I would have is actually go play this stuff. Like theory hammering and math hammering is fine. Stats don't apply to me, but when I do these talks, I always make sure that I include them for normal human beings and just say they don't apply to me, but they do to most people. So I recognize that.
It's I think, what is the old adage? Every plan goes out the window as soon as the first shot is fired. or
Yeah,
if you were Mike Tyson as soon as he hit you. The bottom line is that yes, this is for any army. Go out and test it. But we're going to look at your list. Why don't we go do that? Well, actually, before we do that, you mentioned something earlier about how just one particular sculpt got a lot of negativity, and if you paint it as just a regular Caucasian, he looks a little strange. I actually encourage people to take a look at some of the incredible paint jobs out there. And I've seen some really great ones where the Fyreslayers just look like they're elemental fire beings of different types. I've seen them with kind of like blue fire, which looks amazing.
Yeah, it does.
I've seen them with like the oranges and the reds. Obviously, you could paint them as just the textbook Dwarden, which is, Bugman's Glow and some different various shades of flesh tone, which tend to be like heavily tanned flesh. But, whatever your style is, if you're really going to get into this army, I think there's a lot of creativity, certainly a lot of fun that you can have with the Mohawks themselves. When you paint yours, did you stick with the traditional colors, or is there a particular theme that if you could go back and do it differently that you've seen that maybe you want to go do?
It's interesting, right? So like when I first was going to paint them, so I was overseas. I had like a total of 12 paints at my command, and I used the Martian, like the texture paint, as the base because I was studying in school. I wasn't kind of like living in another country, and I just kind of had a limited palette to work with. So I wanted to do this original picture that they had in the beginning of Grimnir fighting Volcatrix, where he's like a volcano, he's like a magma god, and everyone knows that picture. And he's attacking, and he's killing the mother of the salamanders, or the mother of the magma droths. And that was kind of my inspiration. And I went through some incarnations where I started watching, shout out, not that he needs it, but to Warhammer Weekly. Vince did he's been on my show a few times too. And he does those hobby cheating videos. And I saw this really nice one where he shows you 2 different ways to do volcanic skin. So I thought about redoing, this one where he has the ogre and he does the 2 thing. So that's what I was going to do. And I started to do that before Adepticon, and I realized that it was not a good idea. It wasn't going to work out. And so I changed around a little bit. But if I was to do more and maybe do another lodge, which I've still considered, I think I would definitely want to do something more. I was going to do darker skin, but actually I'm painting my 4th magma drop, my 3rd and 4th ones from Start Collecting Boxes. And something struck me with they put out a tint set a while ago where you can like have they have like the metals, and then you can shade them and do a tint. And then also there's I think this Vallejo has a metallic medium, and I was priming them, getting them ready, and I was struck by the from the old Dungeons and Dragons, like the chromatic dragons that they used to have in the Monsters Manual, and then they had like the metal ones, like the silver one, and and I thought like, that might be kind of cool. So I undersprayed one with lead belcher with like that standard thing you put with metal, and I'm working with some of the gemstone paints themselves as tints to make it like a color dragon kind of that way. So I'm looking at doing an actual lodge that is in the realm of metal. Excuse me. Like mine right now is the Grimfear Lodge is my lodge, is in the realm of Akshi, and I would actually love to do another one. And it was about a good 6 or 7 months on the Fyreslayer group before we saw, with the exception of the studio paint scheme, we saw any duplication color, because you got skin, you have the hair. If you wanted to change the hair between the beard and the mohawk, you can do that as well, as they do in some of the studio ones. You have your weapons, you have your shields, you have a lot that you can, your bases, you can do a lot. And I've seen it all. And some of the frost stuff was a lot cooler after, no spoilers, but after the end of the season finale of a very big show on HBO recently. Some people maybe wanted to do blue things and frosty things as well. That's awesome too. We saw that uptick a little bit. But you could join. You could just. I
think a little time has passed for you. You can get away with that.
Right. Okay. So fire coming out, and everything. Like that's pretty awesome. And some of them at first, when you see like bright neon green and and brown, you're like, oh wow, that's kind of weird. I don't know how I feel about that. But then you play and you see like, oh, that's pretty neat. And it is how you bring them together into a force, because it's a horde army. There are going to be lots of them on the table. And unfortunately, when you look down, I mean, this is funny happened at Adepticon, right? Like I was playing Tyler, and some of Duncan and some of the GW guys came over, and they were talking. And of course, as far as how nice your army looks, they're talking to him about his endless deserts and everything. And the other ones were giving me kind of like the pity talk. But 2 different people from GW, and this is in no way meaning anything, right? So nothing's happening because of this. But they just noticed that when you look down, they kind of agreed that it's very hard to sort of pick out your heroes and other pieces, right? So you have like one guy that has a totem that stands up. You can put them on hero bases, but they kind of get lost in the sea of Mohawks below. And so that's something to think about when you're planning your lodge. And if you're doing like a conversion, or if you're going to be, if they hopefully give us, I would love like a demigryph type of, like a demi-cab unit for us. I think that would be awesome with like magma bombs or something. That would be really cool. So, but
Yeah,
we need something else.
I think I've been saying it for a while now, and I think that this is very similar to what some of the pains that Iron Jaws have experienced, which is
Oh yeah,
limited number of units. They're very parallel in terms of the unit diversity of that subfaction. But one of the nice things about subfactions, about the JHB 17 right now, is that allies can help you with that until perhaps when they inevitably, we got to think that that's going to come down eventually. Maybe an extra unit or two, it gets added on, or as I really hope they do, they actually do a not steampunky like they did with Kharadron Overlords, but the ground pounder, steamhead dwarves that could add a little more dimension, expand that out to add a little more dimension to the dwarves. I won't hold my breath, but I'd like to see that because I have that old school army that's sitting bare gray that I've been holding off on painting or doing anything with, because they're all round, they're all on round bases. But I'd like to do that, and then of course I'd like to join them up with the Fyreslayers. All right, why don't we get into your lists, just so because we're getting through on time. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we could go take a look at your first list. And as we do that, I will go start pulling up the war scrolls as we go and talk about each particular one. And I'd just like for you to talk about them and explain. We can go through the stats real quickly, and then we can talk about how this particular list performs and why you picked it the way you did. So and how they've done for you on the table. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and please tell me once you see the shared screen.
Okay, yeah. So I see army list number 1. This is the straight Fyreslayer one.
Yep.
Okay. So you want me to talk through this and why it is the way it is?
Yep, and I can go ahead and pull up the if you want to start with the Lords of the Lodge, I'll go ahead and pull that up first.
All right. So Lords of the Lodge, I think, is one of our best battalions. And we don't. So before, basically, in the battle tome, we have 3, and then we have a 4th one. And the 4th one is a culmination of the other 3. And it's what's not popular about it is it has one of those silly rules where you kind of have to role play with your opponent to see if he will accept your defeat or surrender. Essentially that you're going to be beating him. And I can see, like, for games of a garage or narrative games and everything, that's one thing, but that would do so well in the tabletop. Lords of the Lodge before the handbook was great, and I always took it because it was our chance to once per game add up to 3 to a priority roll to try and seize the priority for a turn 2 or beyond, and that is no longer a thing in match play anymore by one of the rules. So they dropped it down to 90 points, and I think it is still absolutely hands down worth it. A lot of people, I hear about the RUNEMASTER tax, having to take this guy in this battalion to make it, but I think it's absolutely worth it. So the big strength of this one is that you have a unit, and when I guess let me throw this out here too, we only have 3 units, right? So massive regiments is a huge benefit from the GH Handbook 2 or the 2017, and I think it's one that we should definitely take a look at and use at all costs if you can. It's absolutely amazing. So if you have one of those 3 heroes within 6 inches of this block, and I'm going to tell you to build a block of 80 Hearthguard Berserkers, because that's what's in the list, and that's what I would like to see people do. People are terrified, rightfully so, because while it cannot activate and move and shoot again, one more time, it can activate again in combat and pile in. And these guys, they hit on a 3-up. And
we'll get to the stats on those guys. Let's first talk about the Lords of the Lodge and what it affords you. Yep, and then I'll pull up those war scrolls for those guys.
So what this lets you do is this: if you have one of those 3 heroes from this battalion in there, then this unit of Hearthguard Berserkers can activate again and pile in again in the combat phase. So it's like normally where something can activate twice. The only thing we have in the army that's different is a Grimwrath Berserker, where that's like an immediate activation, but everything else is they're going to talk about as a second activation. So that this battalion lets this unit of Hearthguard Berserkers, which is hopefully at 30, be able to attack and pile in, activate twice in the close combat phase. And keeping a hero within 10 of them is something you want to do anyway, because their hair save is a 6-up and it's going to go to a 4-up as long as there's a hero within 10 inches of this unit, regardless of what battalion they're in.
Okay, well, so let's take a look at that. We're going to go first to the Rune Father on a Magma Droth, and you have a couple of allegiance capabilities there. So we'll go through that as well. Let me just make sure I have. We're talking Rune Father on a Magma Droth, and there we go. Okay, of course, not fully opened correctly, and if this is one of those ones that'll kind of make you blind if you try to if you try to see it from a distance. So I'm going to try to zoom in, but not so much, I guess, that that we're going to be able to see it very easily. But yeah, why don't we go through this? This is a major character. It's a general, and it's riding one of these big behemoths. So let's go through what it can do.
Well, so with this, you have the 12-inch move, which is nice. You have a large base, and you now can extend, of course, your command ability, right? So before this guy has 12 inches that he can extend out for his inspiring presence. On this big base rather than a small 32 base, you get a larger bubble essentially. This guy, I like the father on there because a lot of times you are trying to shoehorn in points to make him legal in a match play, and you want to do 2 units of 30 Volkite Berserkers. But I often will take, instead of taking 10 Volkite Berserkers and then something else so I can still have my allegiance, then I'll just take the Rune Father on the Magmadroth as my general, and then just take the Hearthguard, which can be battle line if he's your general, and I think it's absolutely worth it. So I mean, he's got 12 wounds in the beginning. They don't hit really great. Unfortunately, hitting on 4s is really tough, and that's where you run into a lot of problem. And that's why I find any of the characters on the Magmadroth, I don't find them as effective in close combat. I find them more effective in the press and as they start to die, because then they start to bleed. So you want to look at units that are large, right? So like not multiple models, because the Magmadroth, as it pukes out in its roaring fire stream in its shooting phase, you have 15 inches and you got to roll the number of guys in the model or lower to hit. So like if you're shooting at a single guy, you got to roll a 1, which normally is something I can do easily, except when I need to roll a 1. That's when it doesn't work. So you want to pick targets. With the people talk about horde meta right now, this model and whoever is on this model is a really good, I think, is a horde buster unit. You can get a lot of mortal wounds in there. It goes up to D6 when you're within 5, and that's great. And then you got him in there, then lashing his tail in combat. And if you're fighting multiple units that are not single models, then you have a chance of hitting them and doing mortal wounds. And then the big thing just to remember too is that this guy, whoever's on your Magmadroth, they bleed every phase. You have a chance to bleed and do mortal wound damage out. So if you get wedged up in a good kill pocket, and then you have somebody throwing, especially like Tzeentch, right? Tzeentch just throwing wounds at you in the hero phase, and in the shooting phase, and then the combat phase. Well, each of those times, if you're within 3 inches of their units, you got Skyfires. These things actually work great with Skyfires in there too, because I'm in there and I got like maybe the Gaunt Summon over here, and then like some Zangors. And yeah, they're hitting me, but I'm bleeding on them each phase that they do damage to me. So I'm just dealing out mortal wounds.
So this is why you coined the phrase for the magma bomb, because you're going to run these guys up and try to get them in close proximity to large volume units, large quantity units, and then anything that tries to target them is going to kind of splash over onto those units. So it's going to be a kind of a reflective effect. Yeah.
Yep. It's a big old lug. The points went down. I think the points are fair now. So this guy isn't as great for dealing out damage, just like straight up, I'm going to go charge my general versus your general. But, he does have a lot of wounds, and combined with the new command traits and everything we have in the allegiances now, it definitely changes the game. So I know a lot of people are taking, they're trying to do the cheapest one. So they're trying to either do a rune smiter in there to get to 200 points if they're using allies, or they just need to fit a nice number in, or 240 for the sun. But I think the father's not bad. And one thing that I just want to mention here too, even I forget this a lot of times, he has a weapon breaker rule that's on that scroll, and you have the chance of then breaking somebody's weapon if you get attacked like a monster or hero. So it's happened very rarely. It happened at Holy Wars, and it was funny. I was playing a guy with Bretonnians, and he had the model for King Leon Leoncoeur, and his sword, I'm talking about, his sword had broken. Actually, I think it was actually his sword had broken, and then like I actually rolled and I managed to make the 6 and broke his weapon. So I was like, hey, look at that! Right? It worked, and it worked on the model. The narrative has been forged.
Okay,
how wonderful!
Let's go ahead and take a look at the RUNEMASTER, and we'll go through this really quickly. I'm going to try and zoom in. Yeah, this is the guy that I think a lot of people like to convert to give him a mustache, because he's sitting around with just the beard. So what's his purpose in the list? What's he doing for you in the list?
All right, so we'll ignore the fluff rule there. We'll get rid of that. I know people don't like.
Let's ignore all the fluff rules.
The hidden gem with this guy here is the Volcano's Call, and he picks a piece of terrain within 20 inches, and he turns it into a piece of deadly terrain essentially. Now, there's two things that happen here. Like initially when it happens, so let's say we're talking about like the Citadel Forest, right? When this goes up immediately, you draw a 1-inch lip around the base footprint of that. And anything in there, which means your guys as well, on a 6 takes a mortal wound. So it's not like you have a unit in there. Like if you have 3 beastmen there and the rest are gone, then, you're only going to roll for those 3 guys. But you have a chance of kind of doing, sort of a bit of a screw you to somebody there and then having it deadly. But what's astounding about this that other Fyreslayer players have seen it well, and maybe by a second one of these guys, is the board control. The psychological effect of having a piece of deadly terrain is insane. And some people are really scared about it, especially if they have elite armies and they don't want to run their multiple wound through, because you could have 1 wound or 20 wounds, but on a 1 you die if you go through this or you end your move on it. So being able to have board control, be able to force the enemy some way. If there are objectives, a lot of times there's objectives in pieces of terrain. If you're doing a narrative game too, you might want to hit that piece of that terrain there and turn the heat up. And then you may want to position yourself as you come up the board, and you may want to have that piece of terrain be dangerous, so they're going to be less likely to come through it that round or charge through it. Or then maybe you need to move this one, right? And so for 80 points, and as crappy as this guy seems like he can be, it is astounding the psychological effect he can have. You may already have this model if you bought one of the Silver Tower expansions. He was one of the 4 heroes in there when it first came out. He's really good. I know some people don't like the tax and everything. That's like, this guy sucks. But you also need heroes, right? We need heroes. We need as many heroes as we can in our army to keep those ward saves up on the Hearthguard Berserkers. And then also to score for objectives that require heroes. So this little guy, he's soft, and people tend to ignore him, but especially with a lot of terrain, and Sylvaneth players will hate you if you have this kind of army, because what do they have a lot of? Terrain. They have a lot of terrain. And
you can turn their forest against them. That's pretty cool.
Yep, and they have to move through that too, which requires a roll a lot of times. So, it's really good.
All right, so let's quickly take a look at the Battlesmith. All right, so what's his role and how do you use him?
All right, so this guy, a lot of people are math hammering and theorying hammer him to be the guy, right, who lets you reroll your armor save. So this is just your armor save. You have big bubbles, you have lots of units. So I don't think I have to explain like chaining and daisy chaining and stuff. No, so you have bubble overlap and everything, right? So this guy has an 8-inch bubble of rerolling your armor save. That's awesome. One thing I saw immediately, and I've always used to good effect, and I tell you guys to do this. I talked to the Domus about this the other day. Hopefully I'm not giving away a strategy. This guy, you have at least 1 in your army, maybe 2, and you can tunnel him up as well. Like when it was 3 places of power, you would tunnel him up kind of in between the 2, and then you kind of start the chain. This guy you want to have on a spot that you are defending, or if you are bottlenecking or an objective, whatever it is, because when he dies, there's this rule right in the bottom right-hand corner, none shall defile the icon. And it may sound crippling, but if you have a giant blobs there and they decide to defend that, then they can't move for the rest of the game except to pile in and attack. Sometimes they may be piling twice because of a battalion or a special rule or something, or an allegiance thing. They reroll all their hits and wounds. So now all of a sudden you have these incredibly powerful defenders, and you position him in a way where he is going to benefit you the most while you're still alive and being durable. So a lot of people like to put the Volkites with the shields around this guy. But also then once he's dead, that's great for you a lot of times. And I've had 2 in one game come up, and they both died on the major objectives I wanted them to have. Yeah. And it was great. My opponent could not get to me because I was rerolling hits and wounds, and even with my unholy dice rolls, I was just destroying people.
I think I was one of the people, one of the many people I think that targeted this guy and initiated the icon craziness. I absolutely focused on your characters when we played, for example, which is just the way to do it with synergies. And I learned then just how effective that could be. That was definitely a very interesting effect. All right, let's move on to the Hearthguard Berserkers. So we got 30 of these guys, and you said with pole axes. So let's go take a look at them. And let's see. Okay, I got the right one up here. So this is this is a pretty hard hitting unit. What's so special about them?
Do you want to just get the weapon option out of the way?
Really quickly.
Just real quick. Okay. For me, the broadaxe, first of all, the poleaxe looks cooler in my opinion, and that's very important. The broadaxe to me, I think of it, and this may sound bad, but I think of it as, yes, it has a rend and does 2 damage for a hit that's not going to hit, or a hit that's going to be saved. Especially with things that have high armor saves and everything. I don't really see the usefulness. I tried them once, they did nothing for me. there's a lot of stuff we don't have a lot of mortal wound output, and so that they can hit. And then for every hit you roll with a poleaxe, yeah, your regular damage may not be so good. You're probably going to get a buff from one of your Runespinners to reroll wounds, or if you're by in mystical terrain, you might be rerolling wounds anyway. But for every time you hit, you roll an additional die, and on a 3-up, it's a mortal wound, as you see here from the smoldering braziers here.
Yep.
So that is just stupid good, right? And so now you come back to having a unit of 30 of these, hopefully still alive, hopefully still at a 4-up hair save, because you have a hero, whether he's in the battalion or not, within 10 inches of them. You got one of your 6 or 8 heroes that you have in your army, and they have that 4-up, and they just stand there and just destroy things. And I'm very sad if I can't find damn terrain. And if there is damn terrain on the board and it's on the other side, I will tunnel and get over to it, because hitting on a 2-up with these things and any kind of damn terrain is just gold for the Fyreslayer, or gold, I guess. It's great for us, right? Because we can take a hair save against that kind of stuff, so it's not as damaging to us.
Explain why.
So damn terrain does mortal wounds. You take D3 mortal wounds to yourself when you activate that in the hero phase. And remember, of course, you can do that at any point you want in your hero phase. You just think about how you want to do your order. Say I roll 3 wounds to me, okay? And then I roll hair save and say I only save 1 and 2 guys die. Okay, that sucks, but whatever. Now I'm hitting on a 2-up, right? So every time I'm hitting you on a 2-up, and then I'm going to roll an additional die for a 3-up to do a mortal wound for each of those hits, in addition to the regular 4-up, the damage that I would roll normally. Because the normal damage isn't that great, but what you're really looking for is the mortal wounds here. And so in this battalion, being able to activate twice and be able to throw out 60, potentially 60 mortal wounds is just crazy. And being also able to activate with, it's kind of a horde army tactic, right? Is people sometimes do a movement trays, or they kind of come up and they don't think about the spread out. I think they're doing better now with like Bubble Hammer, but being able to spread out, your guys can pile up. So like if you have your enemy has been smart and they've defended their board, and they've not left you a lot of room to tunnel up, right? So they've spread out back there. They may have dryads coming in this way or whatever it is, but you can always get your guys on the outside to slowly pile in, and you just propel yourself. You get a little bit more movement, because you got a big unit. And then before you know it, you're within 10 inches of a hero that was over there or over there. It's getting tunneled up. So this is the unit that people, whenever I put this on the table, this is the one they're most scared of. Everything in the list, this is that unit. And when it's in this battalion, they're even doubly scared. And they know they have to get rid of it.
Is it maxed out at 30? Can you take 40 of these guys, or is 30 the max?
30 is the max for these guys.
Okay.
And so we have you have now the what do they call it? Discounts for massive regiments.
All right, so we got to move through these a little bit quicker, otherwise we're going to run out of time. So I'm going to go right to the Rune Smiter. Yeah, just because we both have a time limit here. Okay, so let me see if I can find the Rune Smiter. If you want to start talking about him, and I'll get him up there. I got the
okay.
Here we go.
Smiter on foot, right? So this guy's he's known for his tunneling. This is the guy you take the tunnel. So you tunnel, you are off the table. If you are at a TO, I would just suggest talking to your opponent to make sure you agree on the unit, this guy, and the guy he takes with them, whether that's 1 deployment or 2, however you want to do it. I've always seen it played that if I take a Rune Smiter and I tunnel a Magmadroth, that's 2 drops.
Yeah.
Even though they'll come up later. Apparently, some people in the UK do a little bit differently. That's fine. I would happily take it as 1 drop, but just
it doesn't combine them into 1 war scroll, unless this is a battalion thing. I don't know why anybody would do that. If there's some kind of rule that somebody knows that they want to post in the notes, I'd be happy to see that, but I can't see why it would be anything but a 2-drop for this.
I would love to hear those. I'd love to see the discussion about that. So this is the tunnel guy, right? So he tunnels and he does the 20-inch range for the rerolling wounds. So that is awesome. Now the thing about this guy, and what I've learned through playing him, is you might not want to tunnel him too much later if you can handle it, because this comes up in the movement phase, so you've missed his hero phase. So it will not be until your next turn that you can actually get his buff off to give a unit within 20 inches to reroll their 2 wound hits, or their 2 wound rolls and everything. So this guy's awesome, right? And when you're playing with things that involve objectives, he's got to be within 3 inches of whatever he brings up. So people early on to let's tunnel up a big unit of AURIC HEARTHGUARD so they can do their shooting before they get deleted because they don't have air saves. You may want to tunnel up two things of just big units of Volkites, right? Because they're crazy powerful and they can come in and do a lot of damage with you. With the new scenarios in 2017, you'll notice that a lot of those have changed to having units of 20 or more.
Right.
And that's a separate thing. In just the time I won't talk about, but these guys, like 2 or 3 of these at least, and now they're a lot easier to get. I was converting one from a Doomseeker from Silver Tower because I had an extra one, and I didn't like the look of it. I was trying to make a third one. Then now we get this Start Collecting box, and now you can't even get them on eBay. You know, people can't charge what they wanted to on eBay anymore because you can just get one in a box. And they're awesome. So yeah, these things are like, it's hard. It pains me to say a must-have, but this is a must-have. Like this is like, I can't see a list without these guys. All
right, so you have 2 of these guys, one with the Ash Plume sigil. So what exactly quickly does that do?
All right, so this is something we've never had before. This is it's number 5 of the artifacts, and it is a once per battle, an automatic unbind 1 spell by an enemy wizard within 18 inches. So
nice.
We've never had like that before. And the reason I put it on this guy in this list is because he's going to be tunneling up. He's going to be coming somewhere up on the table, right? And we're a slow-moving army. We only move at 4. But it's very easy to get this guy and whatever he's delivering over to an area that's within 18 inches of that, of wizards and everything.
So yeah, it's a from the definitely a forward unbinding option. Very nice. All right, so let's take a look at the Grimwrath Berserker. So this guy's a soloed guy. And how many of these do you have?
I have 3 of these.
Oh, I thought I saw more than one. Okay, I like the model too. Go ahead.
I'm thinking about like a 5 or 6 Grimwrath list at some point. It's good that you have a collection, you get to play it out, and now it's a lot cheaper to do that. So this guy, you want this guy in combat, right? If he dies outside of combat, then he doesn't get to do his cool little dead but not defeated thing. But he gets in there, and the basic idea of this guy is he has a 6-up hair save, if I get to initially, and as you notice, it improves per enemy unit within 3 inches of him. So him tunneling up or coming through a realm gate or whatever into a bunch of horde armies or AURICs or Skaven or Seraphon or whatever it is, all of a sudden, you know, if he can add 1 to that save for each enemy he's within, you know, it's like, again, you want to get these guys in kill pockets. Him dying in combat is actually good because on a 2-up he has a chance to pile in and attack 1 more time. So this guy is actually pretty beefy. You know, hits on a 3, he has 4 attacks, hits on a 3, wounds on a 3. He does have a rend, and for each damage he does, it does D3. So if you get this guy to attack, and it used to be with order, I would throw the Quicksilver Potion on this guy because I would want him to go on my opponent's turn so I could get my attacks in. Because this one is unique where if you do damage to your opponent, you then have the attempt to roll and attack immediately again. So this is one that's not like a separate activation. Like you can literally go again, and then when you die, you can go again. So like the potential you have is 36, well, maybe 39 wounds now with the artifact 50+1.
So you probably want to activate him early because then he gets his initial attack off, and he could die later in initiating the additional stuff.
Absolutely. And sometimes I'll just, because we're on time now, I'll just throw randomly some tips in here. This guy, I know some people don't like him or they feel like they don't get to use him, but consider tunneling this guy, right? Say you take 2, well, base of always 2 Rune Smiters, and say you tunnel up 1 big unit of 30 guys. Consider tunneling, you know, if you're not going to tunnel a Magma Draw, tunnel one of these guys up here, because all of a sudden you get him up there, and then he can kind of maneuver terrain or whatever you need to do, and then he gets into a good kill pocket, and when he's at that most efficient areas, when he's got all these different units around him and he's fighting, and he's going to stay there longer and do a lot of damage, and he's tough to shift out.
All right, so these are the Volkites that we have next. You have 2 units of 30, and I actually don't know if I picked out this amazingly enough. I forget if I picked out I'll have to see if I can find the oh yeah, here we go. I had the Volkite Berserkers. So yeah, let me go pull those up. So you have 2 different units with 2 different loadouts with these guys. So let's go quickly and take a look at what they can do and what roles they would play with the different loadout.
Yeah, this is our battle line unit here, and there's great debate, but it's always civil debate, which I appreciate, about how to build these guys out. Now, fortunately, because they're so cheap, they're cheap to buy point-wise, they're cheap to buy the models. You can do both. You can mix them at your pleasure. I have never been able to really make the shield option work for me so much, but now that I have a bigger unit of 30, I'm going to try that a little bit more. But these guys jump up. They have 2 attacks. They're very tough. You're going to be charging in there and doing a lot of damage, and they're not going to be running. Most times, I think you're going to be finding people taking the command trait from the Allegiance, where you have a 12-inch bubble of not taking battle shock tests, which is huge, right? So when 30 of these guys jump up from a tunnel, it's just horrifying sometimes to the opponent. It's beautiful to you as the lodge general watching this happen, going, "Mwahaha." It's fantastic, and they have their hair save is a bit different, right? So they have as you see, they only have a 5-up save, essentially, the little loincloth they have. But then their save gets better by the number, so it starts to drop down. So you start as a maximum of 30, you go down, and then when you hit down to 19, then you're a 5, and you get down, and you get to a 6. But this unit is just like always good, and I've seen a lot of other people start picking this up as an allied or something they were including in a Grand Alliance, and now I think we're going to see a lot more of these guys on the table in general, whether they're allies or Grand Alliance, because they're just amazing.
All right, so last but not least is the AURIC HEARTHGUARD. So go ahead and let me know what their role is while I go pull up their war scroll.
Yeah, so these are the shooter guys, right? So there's 2 of these, or there's 2 options in that box of Hearthguard. When you buy the model, it has 5 models in the box, and these are the guys with the magma pikes. So they are.
They look like they have guitars.
They do. Like, kind of like locking out a little bit. They see, I can't unsee that. They do the shooting for us, and it's not the best shooting, but if you have a hero within close by to your target, then you can have a better chance to hit. And again, you may have like a damn terrain or something going on that gives you bonuses, but that's up to you. They have an ability. There's 2 shots, 15 inches, and there's a rend on that, and they have an ability against monsters which doesn't come up as often, but when it does, it's pretty neat, where it will have this molten effect. And if so, say you do a wound to a monster that was not slain, but they were not able to save that wound, then you roll a dice on a 5, it gets rapidly cooling stone around it. So until the end of its next turn, you're going to have its movements and subtract 1 from its to hit rolls. Nice. So again, in general, to hits, whether it's shooting, close combat, whatever it is. So you can potentially really cripple one of these guys. You have to roll a 5 or better. It's a 1 in 3 chance, but who knows? It could happen. I haven't had it happen too much. The thing with these that I found, to be honest, is they just they tend to get deleted because they don't have a hair save, so people tend to just kind of get rid of them right away. And I've sort of found less love for them because everybody has an 8-inch the Nerf axe, the Firesteel axes, and with Allegiance, we get 1 round, we can throw those 16 inches instead of 8. You got to remember, each of these single guys you put down, no matter what they are, it's a horde army, it's a lot of bodies, and they all have one of these axes. So when you get to the shooting phase and you start splitting up your fire, you need to finish off. Sometimes that guy, that douchebag that's up there on a Bale 1 Vortex, or maybe you need to hit the guy. You need to take a monster down to a certain tier before you attack in a combat phase, or you need to hit this guy and let him start taking off his guy so he's out of combat one way. There's so much you could do, but it's the volume of the dice, the volume of hits on the table. It sort of permeates everything we talk about. So
they can actually throw their axes and use their guitar guns.
So they can throw an axe at you and then rock out with their other type of axe.
What I like about this, and I'm always pointing this out because this is especially important for new players, is there is a thing in match play that if you're lower points than your opponent, you get a triumph. You get like a roll on the triumph table, which could give you 1 free reroll or roll to your benefit per game. So you hear it here at a 1990. If you're going up against somebody with a 2K list, then you get a triumph. I try never to max out my points. I like to at least have that 10 or maybe 20 points difference, so that I can try to get that extra roll, because as long as you don't forget it, that can come and save you. All right, let's move on to your second list. And a lot of this stuff we've already talked about, so we're going to go kind of very cursory pass through that unless there's something specific in terms of a strategy. But this one now has a different particular battalion, and this also has allies. So we're going to have a little bit of a different feel here. Let's first start off with the battalion, which is the Kinbad, and I'm going to go ahead and pull that up while you're talking about it.
All right, the Warrior Kinbad. So this is another one I think you see a lot of that's going to be out there. So where you have this, let me just grab my screen here a bit closer. You have these guys that can throw their axes twice instead of once, as long as they're within 10 inches of that rune sun, whether he's on foot or on a magma dragon. I can't remember. Magma dragon's actually a thing. A magma bomb. So that's really good. And of course, then there's other ways to move in your Legion's abilities, which runes you want to strike. But they also get to move in and make an additional D3 inches when they pile in, as long as they're within 5 inches of another unit from that same Kinband. So there's 3. So I did 2 different things with these allies. What I tried to do is I have one that was like just totally in your face for all the Fyreslayers, and the allies would support. They would sit back and do that. So of those lists, this is the one where you're going all in. Everybody's going in. So you have your dad, your rune son up there on his magma drop, and he's running in with these unit of these Volkites around, and they're going to quickly be throwing there's fire axes and doing a bunch of damage that way, not taking battle shock tests hopefully, and then smashing into people when you actually get close into hand-to-hand combat, and then you have the allies back plugging those holes in it, and that's going to be the shooting. So the allies allegiances were great for us because they plugged a lot of holes. Like, we don't have magic or unbinding. We're slow. The only thing we have going for us, movement wise, is the tunneling, and we don't have a lot of long range shooting. So that was really nice they were able to do that. And with allies, I think we have even more of a possibility. So I don't know if you want me to talk about the two lists and why I chose the models I did, but there are some that were
really quickly, because we're going to start running out of time soon.
Okay, so then this one has so basically the battalion does what it does. It takes all his Volkites and that Rune Sun, and you're going to go up and you're just going to be destroying people. So he's got a 12-inch bubble of no battle shocks from his command trait, and he's going to go up. Now I have Rune Smiter and a Battlesmith and a Grimwrath Berserker or Grimwrath that are still there, and I'm going to have that Rune Smiter tunnel over probably either the Grimwrath to go over and do that surprise hit behind, because your opponent can make sure that they deny you areas to tunnel up when they see you have a Rune Smiter. But that's why you sometimes want to tunnel, you're deciding when you put it down, you might want to tunnel only a single model, right? Like a hero, whether it's a Magma Droth or a regular 32 mil base, because that guy probably can fit somewhere. And as they're moving around trying to make sure they don't leave you space, a lot of times they screw up and they you have room to get these two models up there, the Smiter and whoever he's tunneling with single as a hero. So depending on the match you're in and what as far as objectives and what you need to do, but you either do one of two things. You get that Battlesmith up there somewhere where he's going to be able to maximize that bubble of armor saves to that big giant blob that you have going up with Fyreslayers, or have him also in an area then where he's going to die around those key objectives or key fighting points that will benefit you, so that no one is taking those from you. Absolutely, nobody's going to come and take your objectives. They're not going to raise them. Like, you've got that area of the board, it's yours. So just either one you can do with those. It's up to you which one you want to send forth.
All right, so you got 3 units of 30 Volkites with different loadouts, which is very interesting. Certainly, there's a lot more models on this. In this already, I can see. So we already know what these guys can do, and they're gonna they're certainly gonna, they seem like they're gonna swarm the board. I imagine one of these units is probably gonna be what you're gonna bring up with the Rune Smiter.
Because you think about so they just have to be within a certain distance, right? So I can have one, I can bring up a unit if I like with a Rune Smiter, so that he's still within 5 and they still get to gain the other benefits that they would from the battalion. So it's just up to you if you want to put your battalion down as a 1-drop or not.
Okay. So we got a Battlesmith. We got 2 of the Grimwrath Berserkers here, so I can see it's a lot of fun with those guys charging to get into combat. But now we have some allies, and that's where I think things are going to become a little different. So you chose to take a good spread of allies. The Gryph-hounds, fairly evident what they do. Anybody who knows anything about Gryph-hounds knows that their only purpose there, really, other than looking kind of cool, is if somebody deploys something close to within a certain range of the Gryph-hounds, it affords your units the ability to get like a free shot, free shooting, right? And since your entire army has axes, then clearly that benefits you in a tremendous way. Has this been something that you've taken advantage of at any point? Has it come up in any games?
Oh, yes. we can do kind of what Skaven can do as well. You could put a whole army underground, and I don't think it's much fun. I don't enjoy that entirely, but if I find that one person, I will. But I have had, again, these are horde armies, right? So I've had that one little Gryph-hound go bark, bark, over there, and all of a sudden 60 or 50 or whatever axes are flying at you. And again, way to fire with these guys. I mean, they don't die easily, and there's a lot of them, and they hit you hard in the face, and they can, short distance, they can throw things at you. And if you have the one the Far Strike rune like lit up where your range is 16 inches, I mean, you have even more distance that you can cover than an 8-inch axe. So I mean, yeah, the Gryph-hounds are great, and sometimes you just need that single model too to get an objective or whatever it is.
Right.
I mean, this game really rewards generalship and adaptability. So like, there's things like the mystical terrain, I think, is great for us, so we don't roll a 1, and damn terrain, I think, is like the best gift we could possibly have. But you have to adapt. You have to look at the battlefield and see what your opponent's doing. And chances are, for a while, they're probably not going to have seen Fyreslayers or played much against Fyreslayers, and they're not going to know what to expect for a lot. So between that and the Night of Zeros is the other one that I have in both armies too, which is
let's go pull that up.
The benefit for the shooting. Whether he's in the middle of 90-something axes getting thrown at you, or he's back, it's your choice really. However you adapt him, but yeah, he was in both of those.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people put this guy down as an ally. He seems to be one of those heavily considered, if not auto include for order allies. Just
Absolutely.
because he can do some decent damage. You know, he's one of those you know, he's nice against chaos, but he's a spoiler unit. So yeah, that's definitely something for you to consider if you're looking for an ally. I like the fact that you have this RUNELORD and the organ gun. So while I pull up the RUNELORD, what's the purpose of bringing him in, other than the fact that you're establishing that there's a connection between them and the standard Duardin, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically there for the deny. He's another way to unbind. We don't have unbinding, and that's basically what I have him in here for. How little he is, being able to unbind. It says you can add, you know, up to 2 too. I mean, you have a chance of stopping spells, and we have a one-use artifact, the Ashman we talked about earlier. But otherwise, we don't really have a lot of unbinding. And you look at our allies. Currently, at this point of this recording, we only have other types of Duard and Stormcast. So
Right.
We don't really have a lot to do unbinding. So this guy, aside from Fluff tying him in, I think now he also, I think narratively, he could be there to maybe yell at the RUNEMASTER who doesn't have his upper lip, because their whole lineage. Read the book. There's an interesting tie back to what Chaos Dwarves were and that ancestry, and that's why it doesn't have the upper lip. So on your own time, go look at that.
There's some good fluff. We'll leave that for another show, though. All right. So are you using his runes for the organ gun?
Yes.
Okay, because it only works on dispossess, so I imagine that's where you're going with that. Let me go ahead and pull that up. So we have the organ gun, which anybody who's seen the organ gun knows that you know, when it works really nicely. Let's see if I have. There we go.
Trying to turn without being too loud here on the mic.
Okay, so the organ gun, it does better when there's an engineer nearby, but you know, it still can do some good damage with die 6 attacks, and the potential for some decent wounds. So it what is it to hit on a 3-up to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage, but you're getting a good D6 attacks. But the 28-inch range is what I like. Also, get a little bit further than that, than the 24-inch division if everybody's on the line.
Yep, and there's a lot of those all scenarios now that involve you kind of having to get in. You know, I like how they have you kind of have to come up and get engaged and have. You know, you're going to see more big units on the field right now, and I don't think that's going away. By the way,
no time soon. Not for at least another year.
The organ gun is great, and it works with the fluff too as well. I played around trying to get an engineer in, and it just
didn't work.
It wasn't. Yeah, just the efficiency, it wasn't worth it. And you know, you're either going to have somebody that it has a task, so you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it, right? So if you're going to do it half-assed, then there's no point in trying to wedge it in there if it's not going to work.
So are you using the additional rend from the RUNELORD? Is that how you're playing it?
Yes, in this case, yeah.
All right, cool. I like the list.
But all right, adaptability, you never know, right? Something else could happen.
So this next one is doesn't have a battalion. All right. So we're starting off with the Rune Sun. And he's the Rune Sun on foot, correct?
He is. Now this is going to be fun, right? Okay. So when I explain this to you, I don't know if you knew this or not, but so this is really great. Sometimes there's events that have a sideboard, which is where this originally came from, or not. It's up to you. And if you know you're going to go to a meta where there's going to be all chaos or ogres or whatever, then this little guy right here, again, we're going to put the fluff stuff away, but his command ability, I don't know if you can zoom in on that, his command ability for this guy, if he's your general, and this guy's on foot, so if you use this ability until your next hero phase, you can reroll failed 2 rune rolls for the Rune Sun and any of your Fyreslayer stuff within 15 inches if they're attacking something that has a wound characteristic of 3 or more. So that's not like remaining wounds, but a lot of things have 3 or more wounds, especially when you deal with some of these bigger armies. So this little something, you have to hide him and shield him so he doesn't die. I mean, you have to protect him as much as you can. But even if it's for round 1 or 2, you know, you're facing Iron Jaws, Beast Claw. This thing was great against. He did great against Tzeentch. Oh, he really cut up Tzeentch because I was able to get up there. I kept him back just far enough, and you get up there, and then boom, we have that 15-inch bubble coming around, and that reroll is just awesome.
Very nice. Yeah, you keep them behind enemy lines if you need to, just as long as the unit that you want to buff is within that 15-inch range.
Line of sight
All right.
blocking terrain, it's everywhere. We hear about it all the time.
So we got a Rune Smiter on a Magma Droth. So it's similar. Is that the same one that we looked at before, or is this a different one?
He's different. He's up on there, and he has a once per game thing that you can do as well. That does the buff out as so. Like, normally they'll pick a unit that will get to reroll their to wound rolls for the next hero until your next hero phase, and then he has a once per game this buff thing. So this runic empowerment, he can, let's see, so trying to find it. Grand Ritual of Awakening. Once per battle, the Rune Smiter can concentrate its little nugget, and until your next hero phase, you reroll failed wound rolls for Fyreslayer units that are within 10 inches of this Rune Smiter. So
nice.
So in addition to the other little stuff, he has one big bubble in the center, or wherever your battle's taking place. I mean, you're using on Magma Draw, so he has more mobility. Instead of move to 4, he has move of up to 12, hopefully, at some point. And, so you have, again, the maneuverability. So, I mean, there's a lot of Fyreslayers having less choices, I think, forces us to adapt a lot more and to take a look at the terrain, which a lot of people don't do, unfortunately, but great for us. And you can play the mind game with them. And so this one is less about throwing the Fyreslayers in like crazy, but this one is more like a slow, steady advance of a lot of units, and to be more spread out with this one.
Right,
so,
you seem like you have more models in this one. You have the Knight of Zeros for the allies. We'll just mention that real quickly, and 2 Gryph-hounds. But here, for the rest of this list, there's a lot more bodies.
Absolutely, yeah. So I got those, again, those Hearthguard Berserkers. I don't want them going anywhere. I want them there and dealing those mortal wounds, because there's, in mortal wounds, we have the Magma Droth, and then we have these guys that can do something, with the poleaxe. They hit you on a 3-up, but we don't have a lot of things that can do mortal wounds. So, I mean, I just think they're amazing, and people are terrified of them. And then I threw in a bunch of Volkites to just jump in there and kill things. So what I would do in this one is I would think about, who do I want to tunnel? Like, how is my opponent setting up? Do I have room? Is the scenario appropriate, and is the board appropriate for me to tunnel up a big unit of Fyreslayer or of Volkites, or are they going to tunnel up a smaller unit? And then another thing too, I just want to put in there, you don't have to tunnel up right away. You have to look at the battlefield and decide, okay, like, if I move forward, are they not going to leave me? Like, if Zinch or somebody's really fast, if they go up, maybe I won't have room to double up to tunnel up somewhere, so I might have to come up early. Or they may not expect you to come up and reinforce your own side after they kill your guys. I mean, so you have that, you have that flexibility, which is really nice. But Volkites with double axes, especially for me, rerolling to hit is great, and they get to reroll their attack. So they're not like Chaos, and they don't have to be a 1. You just get to reroll yours to hits. And if you have a damn train or something, then it's even easier to hit. That's even better, right? But for me, that's why I put the double axes on these guys. And I just wanted to include the shield and the pick option, because I know some people are like that, and it is kind of fun to play between the two. But wow, I have a typo there too. They have double Aws, but they're doubly shocked. But those double axes is just amazing for me. And I as you may theory hammer it out and practice it, but I would try these guys, because I mean, rerolling to hit is just amazing. And once they're in your face, they have the hair save. They're getting reinforced by a battlesmith. They're not taking break tests. Then that's pretty crazy. It's a lot of bodies, and each one of them also has an 8-inch throwing axe, which once per game can become a 16-inch if you strike that rune.
And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen real quickly. But let's consider now just how many shots that is. We're talking about 2 units. If I remember correctly, in that one list, 2 units that are 30, 2 units that are 20, not counting any of the characters. That's a lot of shooting.
Yeah, it's 100.
and what's the range again? Was it 16?
It's an 8-inch axe, and there's once rune you can strike called Farsight, and that's so the runes basically, just really quick for allegiances, is you get to pick one of these runes once per game. There's 6, so usually there's gonna be 1 you don't use, and you get it automatically, but you roll a dice, and on a 6 you get an enhanced version of it. So even if you don't get the 6, you're allowed for this one turn to extend the range of those fire axes from 8 inches to 16 inches. So Sweet. A lot of times, turn 2, you may be getting up, and then you may find Dryka and Durthu and a bunch of other stuff coming around, and you need to do that all-important split fire so you can forge your own path to get through, or whatever it is you're doing in the moment. But yeah, being able to get up there and all of a sudden have 16 inches, or if there's a Balewind or whatever on the other side, and you need that reach that they don't expect you to have, then you reach out and touch someone, and 100 times it could be pretty fierce.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of it's very good for character sniping.
Yeah,
Very
that's
good for just whittling down big models, maybe even deleting them. I mean, when you
mhm.
consider that you have 50 to 100 of these axe throws, not counting what you're going to get when you charge these units in, but before you even get them into close combat, they're going to do some damage. They can do some hurt, and yeah, I don't think that anybody should discount the multi-dimension. These guys may not have a they may not be competing in the magic phase. Now, certainly, if you wanted to, you could take a whole bunch of Empire Wizards, maybe. No, you can't do that either because you can only the only non-Warden are Stormcast, so you can't take any wizards to kind of okay. So they're not going to compete in the magic in the magic phase, but they are going to do very well in the shooting. Even though it's not long range shooting, you can tunnel them up so you can get some stuff really far downfield. And with a good move, or you'll be able to get your axes in reasonable range for those guys who didn't pop up further into the field. Yeah, they're very dangerous. It's a pretty nice reason why they look good at least on paper when it comes to where the meta is. Now, when you talk about the hair save, just for everybody else, it's a special save. Let's just go over really quickly before we start wrapping up.
Okay.
What are the kind of things that add on to that? So if anybody was really looking to kind of maximize that, because a lot of these units, they have a 4-up base or a 5-up base. It's the multi-layered saves that really come into play, especially because what you call the hair save, that special save impacts mortal wounds, right?
It does, right? So if you, so for the Volkites, and tell your opponents this too, right? I always walk through probably more than I should with my opponents to make sure they understand what's going on.
No, that's a good
they can get
strategy so that there's never any confusion, in the midst of the game. Yep.
As I've been since the handbook came out, the new one, the more I've been easing off the throttle, the more I've been just obliterating people. I don't know, like because I'm not a very competitive player. Like I don't tend to sit down and be like, all right, I want to expect to take this kind of army and go win, but I want to have a fun experience. But it can't. But I don't want to say that can't happen, right? And I've had some games where people start to trash talk, and then we turn around and then like allow me to retort. Is my favorite, I like to say. So you have these Volkites, right? And they come up, and that's why it's so much cheaper to get them even now in units of 30. I mean, it's just amazing. And so they have to kill 11 guys before you get down to a 5-up save, and that continues to go. That goes down to a basic 6. The Hearthguard Berserkers, whether you have the flaming pole axes or if you need the broad axes for whatever reason, or you're broad axe curious, then that's fine too. Before you switch to pole axes, that is a 6-up, but that goes to a 4 as long as there's a hero within 10 inches of that unit. So again, we don't have a lot of choices. We need our heroes, and we need to use them there. And then the Grimwrath Berserker, his starts out as a 6, but it goes up when he's in combat. It goes up by the different enemy units that he's within. And just think about, it's 32 mil base, but just watch as a Fireside player, or if you're playing against them, watch how they come up, watch how you can maneuver around somebody, and you can work yourself into a kill pocket. Because a lot of times when someone's coming up, you're like, come into my kill pocket, I'm going to kill you. You're like, well, I'd be glad to. Let me show you why. Like you can come in, and they can surprise you with the Magmadroth and the Grimwrath in a kill pocket. It's just ideal. It's lovely.
You mentioned the 32-inch base. I was very surprised when this army came out and everybody was on 32s. There are some armies where you'll see the heroes are on the 32s. But when I look at the Dwarden, the classic dispossessed dwarves, they're on 25s. Even the characters are still on 25s. They don't need to be on 32s. It could be a choice if you want to differentiate them. But they're all on the smaller basis, so you can crunch them up. But they're all in this big, heavy armor. These are guys with loincloths and mohawks, and they're on 32. It illustrates the eliteness of the model and maybe their range of effect. I would have loved it if they were on 25s, though. Yeah, that would have been very sweet.
But I mean, there are advantages to that too. Just like with any army, you think about board control, think about extending your bubbles and everything. And as much as, you can't always you can only get so many guys around to attack a big base like a stone horn or whatever it is you're doing. But you also have an easier chance of getting to those hero synergies in those bubbles.
All right. So again, we had a limited amount of time for this show, just because of my schedule, your schedule. So we tried to rush through it, unfortunately, but we were able to get through it. Why don't we wrap this up and just finish with last comments? Anything that you really want to just accentuate with anybody who's watching? Exclamation point on any details or anything that somebody should consider when they're fighting against or fighting with Fyreslayers.
I don't know if you have any questions below, but fighting against Fyreslayers, so take out the heroes and maneuver in a way that they cannot tunnel up those big units and they can't bring them. And don't leave the Fyreslayers the space, because they do have big units. There are so many of them to chain around you, right? So if you have these guys here, don't leave us the chance to pile in, and to suddenly extend as we go through, because then that's 1 inch reach for most of the stuff, but that really lets us propel forward with a low movement army. So yeah, against Fyreslayers, then yeah, get rid of the heroes and try to do the board control and not allow them to do their tunneling shenanigans. Go ahead.
And maybe take out the magma dross before they get too close.
Yep. We need kill pockets with multiple armies, or with units that have a lot of models in the unit. So if you can deny that, then that's great.
That's great. Thank you, Kenny. I know we were trying to schedule this for quite a while. Really appreciate your coming on and going over some of the lists. And hey, we got to do a little countdown till when you get close to getting your 200th game with Fyreslayers.
I think. Well, I've had 150, and I've been on a lot of shows for them, but I did one episode once on my show. I should plug my show, Combat Face.
Yes, please, and send me the link so I can put it in the notes below as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did a show a couple months back with Fyreslayers from South Coast GT. So I had 3 different guys that went and played Fyreslayers. One of them got very, very high up, as you may have heard, and did very well with them. So there's a show that you can listen to about that, and I tend to talk to other people about that. But when we get to game 200, there's going to be something spectacular, and I don't know what it is, but we'll figure out something too. And I tend to post also Fyreslayer group. It's over 1,000 people now. You just go on Facebook and just look for Fyreslayers parentheses Age of Sigmar. We're now we've actually already created our first round of dice that you can go see on the Facebook group there, and we have like over 1,000 of those that are being ordered. So those are in production now, that are going to be disseminated throughout the world. So you'll hopefully be seeing those orange dice with the Fyreslayer rune on it very soon, and we'll do more of those in the future. But yeah, thank you very much for letting me.
Is a little Urgol rune? Is that what it's going to be?
There's a little Urgold in there for you.
That's great. Thank you, Kenny, man. We'll have you back on again. We'll definitely be talking more Fyreslayers or anything else that you're doing. Absolutely. Look out for Kenny's. Once I get the stuff from Kenny, I'm going to put it in the notes below. So take a look at it once I get that, and give him, just check him out. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And build up your Fyreslayer list. Tell us what your list is like, how your experience has been like. I'd love to hear more about the details that from the audience on what they think is a good list for 2K. And
I do. I know it's going to be scary looking at the comments. Probably I'm going to get attacked, but I want to see the people that are theorying. I want to play it a few times and then tell me if it still works the same way on paper, right? Than it does on the actual field.
It's constructive. All the all the ragers and trolls I've banned long ago. Oh, any case, have a great day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.